Cliffs Natural Resources welcomes a major positive move in the Ring of Fire negotiations. A groundbreaking for the city's newest fire hall. And students stagger under an increasing tuition burden.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Officials with Cliffs Natural Resources say there are still several hurdles to clear before the Ring of Fire mining development can move ahead.
As we first told you here on the NewsHour yesterday, the Matawa First Nations have withdrawn their court challenge of the federal environmental assessment process for the Cliffs Chromite project. Today, both parties are cautiously optimistic that the move will help the EA process get back on track. John Aganis is the Director of Environmental Affairs for Cliffs. He says the company is very pleased with the decision by the Matawa Chiefs, and they look forward to working with individual communities to develop an environmental review process that suits them. But even though it's a significant turn of events, he says it's just one of several obstacles. Back in June, we previously identified four reasons for temporarily suspending the EA. This was one of those four reasons. While the EA is still temporarily suspended, this is a key step in resuming activities. We are on hold for now, but we look forward to some of the other items being resolved in the near future. Those issues include unfinished agreements with the province in terms of infrastructure, as well as approval of the EA terms of reference. Meanwhile, Matawa CEO David Paul Achnepanescum explains that the Chiefs passed a resolution on August 1st to discontinue the litigation, and the courts finally approved it September 5th. He agrees it's a big step and is hopeful it will lead to more discussion.
Once we have resolved the environmental assessment and how it's going to go about, I believe our chiefs will be prepared to, ready to sit down and talk about the real development of the chromite or nickel or whatever mine development that's going to happen.
Cliffs officials say they commend Matawa leaders for their decision and will continue reaching out to First Nations around the Ring of Fire to develop a community-led environmental review process.
It's been a long time coming, but construction is finally underway for two new fire halls in the city. The official groundbreaking ceremony was held today for the new West Fort station on Frederica Street. Preparations are also being made to demolish the old Nebing station on 20th Side Road before the new building goes up. As Matt Scooby reports, there's plenty of excitement for the upgrades that have been in the making for over 2 decades.
It's the first major investment in the city's fire facilities in 25 years, and for most it couldn't come soon enough. After council approved the $7 million projects last fall, the groundbreaking ceremony officially kicks off construction of 2 new fire stations in Thunder Bay. Fire Chief John Hay says the new location will help them come closer to meeting their goal of a 6-minute response time in the West Fort and Nebing wards.
It's bigger than that because areas that were getting 11 minutes and 12-minute response times are now down to 7s and 8s, and it's quite an improvement overall for that. The goal is 6 minutes, but there's some limitations to how often we can do that.
The combined age of the Brown Street and Old Nebing stations is 120 years, so an update was needed. West Fort Councillor Joe Verderamo was skeptical of the plan at first, but says he's now satisfied.
I did hold their feet to the fire, asking the question, why here, why 2 stations, why not 1 station, and all that. And all those questions were answered in a positive way.
Out on 20th Side Road, a temporary shelter is being constructed at the North Nebing Community Centre, where fire crews will operate out of until the new building is complete. Demolition of the old fire hall, which has been plagued by mold, will take place in the near future, and it can't happen soon enough for Nebing Councillor Linda Ridholm.
It's a matter of safety and modernization, having facilities that will accommodate the new modern size equipment. Yes, it's the right time. Maybe later than the right time.
Manager for the city's construction services division, Jerry Brewer, says this is the first time they've had a true integrated design process.
We've taken a look at the city's requirements for sustainability. We've embedded the urban design guidelines, the stormwater management plans, and also our energy management plan. And we brought that all together to come up with not only an architecturally appealing building, but a functional and sustainably constructed building.
The other part of the project features renovations to the James Street, North Central, and Vickers Street fire stations in order to accommodate EMS operations. The old Brown Street Fire Hall will also be converted into an EMS satellite station. That work is expected to be complete in March, while the new fire hall should be operational by July of 2014. Matt Scooby, TBT News.
Students at Lakehead University say tuition fees are quickly becoming unaffordable. According to a report released today by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, the cost of a university degree, with inflation factored in, has quadrupled since 1990. And it doesn't seem to be getting any better, as tuition in Ontario will approach $10,000 by 2016. Tara Allaire reports.
Across Canada, the average university student pays over $6,600 for tuition, a number that's expected to rise to more than $7,400 within the next 3 years. According to the latest study, Ontario has the highest tuition rates in the country at about $8,400, a number that's projected to surge to $9,500 by 2016. Lakehead University Student Union President Ian Kaufman says the almost yearly increases have had widespread negative impacts on students and their families.
Our food bank is getting accessed many times more in the last couple of years than it ever was in the past. It's having really interesting impacts on parents as well, which we sometimes don't think about. For example, CIBC just commissioned a poll a couple of years ago that talked to parents about what the effects of rising tuition was on them. About a third of them are delaying retirement. Almost 20% are delaying it by more than 5 years to pay for their kids' post-secondary education. About a third of parents as well are taking on extra debt to pay for post-secondary education.
Madison Wheeler is a first-year civil engineering student. She pays around $9,000 a year for her education and is living at home to offset the cost. She says dealing with the high cost of post-secondary education is something students her age are unprepared for.
It's insane how fast it's grown and how much more people have to pay already, and it's like they expect you to pay right now, but you're only like 17, 18, 19. Some people go later, but it's like none of us have that much money, so we're going into debt and then we're expected to pay it off right away, and it's like this vicious cycle that starts way too early.
Students attending university in Ontario can expect fees to start in the most expensive position and stay there. According to the report, freshmen can expect to pay nearly $10,000 by their fourth year. Third-year biomolecular science major Brendan McCarthy says dealing with high tuition fees seems to be the new normal.
Well, it seems like tuition's always going up, so it's just more money you have to fork out. Good thing that I'm kind of getting towards the end of my education, so I don't really have to pay that much more, but I know a lot of kids are going to go into, post-secondary having to pay a lot more than I had to.
Tara Allaire, TBT News.
Meanwhile, faculty and staff at Lakehead welcome new undergraduate students with an Aboriginal Student Orientation Day. Hosted by Aboriginal Culture and Support Services, the event featured information and activities to assist undergrads in their transition to university. Cynthia Wesley-Eskima says there are roughly 1,200 Aboriginal students at Lakehead and a record 22 enrolled in the Native Access program. Today was an opportunity for them to explore the supports and programming available.
Downstairs we have the Aboriginal Cultural and Support Services, which does the powwows and the cultural events, and we have the Aboriginal Initiatives Office, which also helps people get their bearings. We put in a transitions where we're looking for an Aboriginal Transitions Advisor. That's a new program that we're putting in that basically helps with those jaunts from either remote to urban or from foster care to self-care to high school to university. We're trying to find somebody that can help ease that transition process.
Wesley-Eskima says with more and more Indigenous students engaging in post-secondary education, Lakehead is making an effort to accommodate their needs across the campus and the curriculum.
A woman involved in an unusual collision near Dryden last Friday has succumbed to injuries suffered in the crash. 38-year-old Crystal Machendegos of Vermilion Bay was the driver of a vehicle that came into collision with two horses on Highway 17 in Wainwright Township. Machendegos was airlifted to hospital here in Thunder Bay with what were initially described as serious injuries. According to police, she passed away yesterday afternoon. A passenger in the car was treated at the Dryden Hospital and released. There is some frustration in the Long Lac area over a recent decision by Via Rail.
The company says it will be terminating its lease for a passenger station located in the community. The change is planned to take effect on October 1st, and that has some on Greenstone Council worried people will be left out in the cold. Dennis Ward reports.
It may not look like much, but for passengers of Via Rail, it's at least a shelter with a bathroom. The passenger train service runs through Long Lac 3 times per week in each direction during peak periods and twice per week each way in the winter. Via says it has reviewed its operations and determined the Long Lac station is no longer required. In 2012, roughly 1,300 people got on or off the train in Long Lac. Greenstone Mayor Ron Beaulieu worries people will be left out in the cold.
People will have to be waiting basically outside at 40 below zero when it is 40 below zero to take the train. But I guess it's something that CN and Via has been going, that they've been going through this for the last few years, closing stations, and it's a subject that's touchy for us, but at the same time it would be very important to be able to keep on providing the service to the people of Northwest Ontario.
Via made a similar decision in Nakina a few years back, and Ward Councillor Jay Dater says it hasn't been pretty, especially in the winter. Long Lac Councillor Mary Moylan says the train is often late and people are raising concerns about losing the indoor shelter.
I caught the train the other week. There was somebody waiting for the train that was coming after mine. And I mean, they were there all day and there really was nowhere else for them to be, to wait for the train. So I'm disappointed that Via is not looking at the passengers up here and trying to give them a better service.
Council debated the potential of providing the service when it comes to an end on October 1st, but the municipality is looking at cutting back on some of the services it currently provides, and there wasn't much appetite to take on this operation. They will be reaching out to MP Bruce Heyer, who has been pushing for increased Via Rail service. Dennis Ward, TBT News.
The head of a rescue team at that mall collapse in Elliott Lake last year was back on the witness stand today, and he told an inquiry into the disaster about his decision to call off the search for survivors early on. Joanna Remiliotis reports.
Good morning.
It was a day of marked regrets. As the head of a doomed rescue mission continued his testimony, it soon became clear Toronto Police Staff Inspector Bill Needles has many of his own.
You did not solicit any opinions as to whether there were any other options. Is that fair?
Regrettably not, sir, yes.
Needles was in charge of an elite search and rescue team deployed to Elliott Lake when part of the town's mall roof caved in. A dangerous operation that became an emotional one too.
I knew in my head that this was going to be a very difficult situation for anyone to survive. But my heart was telling me that I still need to go forward.
But Needles abruptly called off the rescue 48 hours in, fearing the sagging structure would collapse again on his crew.
They're going to give up? That's wrong.
The decision was shocking because just hours before, signs of life had been detected. Mike Croak, a retired mining rescue worker, was so outraged he organized a team of volunteers to take over.
Why did you feel the need to organize this group?
Because there was somebody in there hurting.
I couldn't believe that they were just going to quit. Like, I was just so angry.
In exchanges challenging Needles' leadership and judgment, the inquiry lawyer asked why other plans weren't being explored before the mission was abandoned.
My time was taken up with discussions on where we were, not necessarily hadn't had the opportunity to too much discuss where we were going.
The rescue was resumed after direct intervention from then Premier Dalton McGuinty.
It's not clear what impact the delay had, or even if all the methods used to detect signs of life were reliable. But the questions do linger, because there was no plan B until it was too late. Joanna Remiliotis, CBC News, Elliott Lake.
It's an issue that has the local Beekeepers Association concerned. 150 people gathered last night at the Quebec Legion to talk about the threats to local bee populations. MPs John Rafferty and Bruce Heyer joined in the discussion about the recent use of synthetic nicotine in Canadian agriculture. As Courtney Rutherford reports, if a change isn't made soon, local beekeepers say the situation could be grave.
It may appear as a pesky summer bug that's flying around your garden. However, across North America, beekeepers are experiencing a loss of bee colonies due to the use of certain pesticides. Bees and other pollinators play a huge role in ensuring that most fruit and vegetable crops mature into food. The issue has local beekeepers calling on the Ontario and federal governments to suspend the use of neonicotinoids, which researchers believe is killing millions of bees and threatening the food supply.
I don't know what the outcome is going to happen, but all of our mortality rate is pretty high. All the testing that the government has done down east and southern Ontario, 70% has neonicotinoids in the dead bees that have been found dead. So 70% loss rate's pretty high. So you can take it from there, where it's going to end up.
Neonicotinoids kills bees by taking away their ability to navigate back to their hive. If they do make it back, they can contaminate the queen, wax, and board. By leaching into soils, groundwater, and waterways, they not only kill bees, but also other pollinators, amphibians, and birds. Anne McGoey is a local beekeeper. She says people don't understand the severity of the situation, and she hopes the two MPs in attendance, John Rafferty and Bruce Heyer, will help get the message across.
I think people love to sweep things under the carpet. I think we listen to the big companies saying that no, the pesticides are fine, there's no problem, but I really believe there is a big problem. And it may not be one pesticide in particular, but by the time the poor bees are exposed to that, plus other chemicals in our environment, it's been very difficult for them.
Local beekeepers are hoping that the ban of the pesticide will be in place by the time the 2014 spring planting season begins. Courtney Rutherford,